It's been a marvelously fun and enjoyable ride talking about video games with anyone who's felt like joining me these past 10 years on DLC. We've talked about a lot of stuff over the previous 182 episodes. We've done retrospectives, talked about gaming industry issues, social issues, developments in the indie world. We've prognosticated and speculated, we've been silly, and we've enjoyed ourselves throughout it all. But most importantly, we hope you, our listeners, have enjoyed listening to a rotating cast of schmucks talk about anything and everything. Whether this podcast gets a sequel, prequel, port, or reboot remains to be seen, but this game is about to end. So on episode number 183, we will close it all out the way we've usually done, with a free play, an open discussion next on downloadable content. Welcome to Downloadable Content. I am Brian, and with me we have Ron.
Hey, everyone.
We have Ronny.
Salutations.
We have Gabe.
Hello for the last time.
We have Spencer.
Howdy.
And for the first time in 5 years, we have a John.
Greetings.
Welcome back. After the first time, it's been 5 years. You didn't run away, so thank you for coming on for this last one.
Well, you said you were ending it, and I was like, well, you gotta get in there one last time, you know?
Yep.
Giggity.
So...
It's all just a plot so I can't catch up to Ron. I know it.
Yes, you have figured me out. You have figured me out, Ronny. Yes, you are about 70 episodes behind Ron, and that's why I'm doing this. So you can never, ever...
Brian's sitting there rubbing his fingers together like, not today.
Not today, Satan. But yes, we are going to have a free play discussion. It's the final episode of downloadable content, at least as far as I am hosting it. Whether someone decides to pick up the mantle later on remains to be seen, but if that happens, it'll be their problem. So,
emphasis on problem. That's when you get ported to the Google Stadia, right?
Ooh.
When somebody hits New Game Plus.
No, it's New Game Plus, or somebody will have just like certain sections of episodes as paid DLC.
I would say it's also starting over with a different character to start with, like different stats and everything.
For New Game Plus, it should be that you start from the first episode, but with knowledge of everything. So, like, when I come on the first time, you can be like, "Get out of this now."
So Chrono Trigger, so you just like start off at like level 175 and just go nuke level Lavos.
Exactly that.
With the present.
Exactly that. When I come in like, "Hi, I'm John from Kazarth Studios," and Brian could be like, "Yeah, about that."
It's dangerous to go alone. You don't want to be here. Oh, but yes, it is the final episode. After 10 years, we are wrapping this all up. Oh, and by the way, I mean, we're recording this in December, but by the time you all hear this, it's going to be 2021, provided the ghost of Dick Clark has not wiped out all of civilization and just this horrible
a fitting end.
If it would be.
We still have 19 days
Tease me like that, Brian.
To really make an impact in the presidential election.
You're assuming we're not going into December 32nd and 33rd and 34th.
I mean,
what about Smarch?
I mean, Smarch. I mean,
bold of you to assume that the year's going to end.
But, I mean, in my head, it's like March 290th or something like that. So
So, no, it's interesting. Maybe the election result, now that the Supreme Court knocked it down, I mean, the next step is Judge Judy, obviously. But then maybe after that, it could be adjudicated by the ghost of Dick Clark.
It could be. I know The Daily Show said that now that Joe Biden has won the election for the 100th time, he's eligible for a free sub. So
he strikes me as a basic bitch meatball sub kind of guy.
So yes,
on white bread, because that Italian bread is too spicy.
I've said it a billion times, but yes, every single episode of downloadable content can be found on our website, dlcpodcast.com. Yes, it will still be there. It's not like I'm taking it down as soon as this episode goes up. dlcpodcast.com. Every episode will remain on iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher. It's no longer Google Play Music. They got rid of that, and it's now Google Podcasts. So I had to spend like a couple of days just getting rid of a bunch of dead links. That was fun.
Because Google has to get rid of anything of theirs that actually works and people like.
And we're also on Spotify, so we're all going to be there. I will be taking down the feedback button and the upcoming recordings button because there are no more after this. But
so you should leave the feedback.
Yeah, you don't want like an email like 3 years later telling you ain't shit.
If you want to continue leaving feedback, please just pick up your telephone and speak into it, and we will hear you.
Or just yell really loud.
We may not answer you, but if you want to scream into the void, go right ahead.
The answer will come in ways which you cannot predict
or
and
perceive.
Which you cannot confirm are from us, but you will know that it's from us.
Are we on Welcome to Night Vale now?
On the third day, look to the dawn.
I'm just going to go into Brian's channel on Twitch and just ask him erroneous questions there.
Yeah. DLC.
So on episode 158, you said something and I don't agree with it.
DLC slowly becomes the Magnus Archives. But anyway, but it is a free play. We have 6 of us, so we're going to divide it up: 3 in the first half, 3 in the second half. And I know that a couple of our panel is pressed for time, so we are going to start things off with the longest tenured co-host of downloadable content here. We're going to start with Ron.
All right.
So the floor is yours, sir.
I'll leave this up to the others. Do you want me to take the low-hanging fruit of Cyberpunk, or do you want me to actually take something else?
Well, you took the low-hanging fruit on the last free play. So, I mean, you can take the low-hanging fruit again, or you can shoot a little higher.
That's the sweetest fruit of all.
Jesus, the thing is that I'm trying to think like what's been like in the video gaming news as of recently. And besides the video gaming wars happen as of recording like a couple days ago, like nothing crazy besides Cyberpunk when Cyberpunk is Cyberpunk. So,
well, I mean, we did get like 6 hours out of a Final Fantasy VII podcast, and they did just drop Sephiroth, so we could probably make that work for 40 minutes.
Sure. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about Sephiroth going up at Smash.
He killed Mario.
That fucking... At this point in time, my opinion, just Sakurai is just fucking with us, and he's just like, yeah, sure, Sephiroth, yeah, fine, whatever. You want the... I don't know, the Mac. Not a little Mac, the God, what the frick am I thinking of?
If you don't know, nobody does.
Just a Mac computer.
You want that guy from Guilty Gear? Yeah, sure, whatever. Yeah. Doesn't matter.
How about the car from Daytona?
We can get the Jeff Gordon 24 car from Daytona 500 19.
No, but there was a fighting game that had a Daytona car in it. So that wouldn't be too far off.
Wasn't there a Sega Saturn fighting game where the Daytona car fought in it?
You know what's even crazier is I literally just said that.
Did I completely blank? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Fighters Mega Mix.
Yes, I actually own that. I couldn't remember the name.
I'm here from the future, which is probably the past by the time this show is aired, but I can confirm that Sephiroth is kind of fun to play, surprisingly floaty, Definitely interesting decisions they made as far as the sweet spots for the sword, but I suspect they will patch that. And
I'm gonna stop you right there. That's some bullshit. You notice Nintendo doesn't patch their own games. Nintendo releases a game as is and does nothing to it and treats it as holy grail 10th commandment material.
That has not been true for a long time.
You know, just being a pedantic smartass. Doesn't know what the fuck the internet works still, in my opinion.
Yeah. What do you think this is, Tumblr? Anyway.
The fact that
by the time this airs, the patch might be out. We'll see.
The fact that the down attack is literally him stabbing Aerith is just the best.
I'm a little disappointed that Supernova doesn't make you wait 3 minutes. Like the entire, make everybody in the play group have to wait 3 minutes while it plays through.
While you watch the solar system getting destroyed.
And the timer continues.
There's actually, other than the obvious reason why you wouldn't do that, the Japanese version of Final Fantasy VII never had that animation.
I did not know that.
It was added to the international version so that Sephiroth would have an attack as cool as Knights of the Round.
Yep. I actually did not know that. So,
the more you know.
Yeah, there goes the gist.
The American version is basically the international version.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Really, all he had to do was flip his hair, and that would have been as cool.
I mean, you're not wrong. No lies detected.
Flips his hair, does 9999. You know.
Okay, so I don't have this game or the system. But what is his stage in this? What stage did they give?
It's going to be the final crater that you just sent into. It's like the last 4 or 5 levels of it, where it's really the core of the planet where the Genova cores are.
I'm disappointed by that. I'm disappointed. I would it would have been cool if it was like Nibelheim on fire.
That would have been awesome.
Or Nibelheim that becomes more inflamed as the
and you could have
goes through.
You could have the flames be hazards.
I think it's going to be.
That would be pretty cool.
From what was shown, it looked like there was something akin to how Samus's stage with the lava coming up as the answer comes up. And something like that, along with the live stream, because they do show the high wind flying out of the depths of the crater with the live stream kind of erupting up behind it.
Mm-hmm.
I think the most significant part of Sephiroth being added is now there'll be more than 2 Final Fantasy songs. There'll be 3.
I know. There'll be 3.
There'll be 3. And how is it they add they add Cloud and he gets 2 songs, and they add Simon Belmont and there's 50 Castlevania songs in the game.
Well, because one of those companies wants lots and lots of money for their songs, and the other one does not give a shit about video games anymore.
That's true. They're in the pachinko mines right now.
Is it pachinko? I don't give a shit then.
Sure. Take what you want. Take what you want.
They make a lot of money off of that pachinko crap.
Absolutely.
And for those of us who were in the Final Fantasy VII remake, tears of depth of believing in shit, Sephiroth fell out Cloud to smash.
I'm actually kind of surprised. I'm actually fine with the stage that he's getting. I'm kind of surprised they didn't use the stage from the 7 remake just to tie it in.
Well, I don't know anything about the remake because I'm
say that's unlikely just because it's a Sony exclusive, and not is it Sony exclusive. Even the re-release is going to be PC only. It's not like Nintendo's going to get FF7R ever.
I mean, to be fair, Enter Creation is basically Final Destination, so...
Yeah. I mean, I do agree with what you were saying, but I can't help but think them choosing Sephiroth has at least something to do with running with getting some of the success from 7R and trying to get some of that excitement.
I think it was just because he was heavily requested.
To it.
So here's the thing, how come when a character like, say, Byleth is added to Smash Brothers, it was oh, not another sword character, and then they're literally jizzing their pants over Sephiroth, and they want Sora from Kingdom Hearts. They want sword characters, but
because they want sword characters they care about.
Yeah,
that's
God
ultimately
forbid
what
it's
it is.
Fire Emblem, right?
Yeah, I've been playing the Fire Emblems. I have a couple times that are really into them, and I'm totally fine with the Fire Emblem characters that are getting added. But I do understand for every character that's added, or ones that aren't as much part of the main theme, which is most of Fire Emblem, people are like, that's a spot that could have been an iconic character I care about. I don't think there's much the sword thing is just a way of them.
Silly.
Yeah, I was gonna say the sword thing is just kind of going, hey, I don't want these characters I don't care about. And the fact that they aren't mechanically interesting to a lot of people, I think, is part of it as well.
I do think we don't necessarily need 3 links.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand why Toon Link isn't like an Echo Fighter.
I kind of thought he was going to be, and
yeah, I don't get that personally.
Yeah, like the whole when I saw that Sephiroth was announced as a DLC character, you're exactly right. One of the first comments I saw was, "Oh, great, another sword character," and that just struck me as utterly pedantic. It
it really is.
And I'm like, in a game that now has Sephiroth is going to be the 83rd character to this roster. Like, really? That's what you care about? That
oh, great, another punch character,
another character that fights.
Oh God.
Okay, to be fair, keep in mind that we had Min Min, which is from ARM, which is actually a fairly decent game.
Mm-hmm.
The first one. And then they have fucking Minecraft Steve as the second one.
Yep.
Just dichotomy. You're going from niche Nintendo game to fucking Minecraft Steve to goddamn Sephiroth.
Which is
by the way, let's also keep in mind too that some of the other things we've had added were Bayonetta,
Snake,
mm-hmm.
Rob. And Rob was a goddamn peripheral for the NES.
Yeah. The game varies wildly from super iconic characters to very niche characters. I just think for a lot of people, the whole Fire Emblem thing for a lot of them is we got a lot of neat what would be considered niche characters.
Those are Nintendo's characters, though. They're not coming from another company.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's an important distinction.
I love how Sakurai has recently, in his more recent breakdown videos, just been like, guys, I agree, there's too many of these, but Nintendo tells me which characters to make at this point, and I'm fucking sick of it, but here we are. I'm going to keep making stuff for you because I love the game.
I think part of it is the when they go sword characters as well, because I've played them, and not all of the Fire Emblem sword characters play super uniquely. And I mean,
there's only 2 styles there maybe 3.
And I think that's a flaw. If all the sword characters played uniquely and felt different, nobody would be complaining about them being sword characters. They'd still be complaining that they're Fire Emblem characters and that this series is getting more spots than anything else other than Mario. But
Mario and Pokemon have the highest. Mario's got 9, Pokemon technically has 10.
Yeah.
That Fire Emblem got 8. But keep in mind too, those are all Nintendo first party IPs.
Absolutely.
27. No, my math is wrong. No, it's 27.
I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm just saying I do understand where they're coming from.
Meanwhile, I'm just like, come on, guys. You're adding, come on. Where's Shovel Knight? As an actual playable character. Come on.
Can we get the Knight from Hollow Knight and Shovel Knight in there? And hell, let's just throw Master Higgins from the Adventure Island games. Let's get some real deep cuts in there.
Yeah, like Guybrush Threepwood. Just it just how.
Oh my god!
And
how did that even work? Now I'm thinking of the logistics of it, Brian. Thank you.
You're think of Master Hand mechanics and just put them on the paintbrush.
Yeah, as long as Nintendo's just adding characters, it's all right, fine. We had Shovel Knight, we got the character we got from Hollow Knight. Sure. What else?
Shovel Knight's already in there, kind of.
Yes, he is.
I was meaning as an actual playable.
I always wanted Bomberman, but they keep putting him in as an assist. So
yeah. And everybody's wanted Geno forever, and they will never give him to us.
Yep.
I couldn't care less about. I would be happy if they turned Gino into a meme like Waluigi. You will never get Gino.
You're gonna get a playable Goomba. Yeah. That's what I want to know.
How about Waddle Dee with a spear?
Okay, so let's keep in mind too. Like here's the franchises that have been added as DLC to Smash Ultimate since it was released initially. Mm-hmm. You've got Fire Emblem, sure, fine, whatever. Dragon Quest, that's cool. ARMS is again we talked about, and then you have Piranha Plant. Now then here's the like the weird shit, right? You have Terry from Fatal Fury, Minecraft Steve, fucking Sephiroth, Joker from Persona, and then Banjo and Kazooie from Banjo-Kazooie.
I don't think any of those are weird except for Joker.
I don't even think Joker's that weird. I think
I only think Joker's weird because he's only appeared in one game.
Well, okay, but you have the second game on the Switch that's already out in Japan. It just hasn't come here yet.
I guess I just always saw it as like there's not really a character that represents Persona. So it's
I can understand.
Interesting
and then you
choice.
Have Cloud and Sephiroth, who are both from Final Fantasy VII, and that's not been on Nintendo.
I mean, no, it hasn't.
Final Fantasy has a big representation with Nintendo, just not those specific characters. And I think that relationship with the series counts.
I'm just saying it's a similar situation to like Joker representing Persona to some extent, except obviously like Cloud and Sephiroth have been so big for so long, so it kind of makes more sense there. But it's a similar idea.
Weren't Cloud and a whole bunch of Final Fantasy characters in a Final Fantasy game on the 3DS and Fortune Street on the Wii?
Part of the reason why they can show up.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah.
I just mean like the primary title, you know. So
yeah, but like my point with Joker, and I don't, I'm not against it because Persona 5 is a really great game and everything. Is that it's like it's not the character I would have picked for like an Atlas representation personally, but like I don't see how like Steve or any of those other ones that were mentioned are weird choices. They're all important gaming icons.
I mean, Persona 5 has kind of broken Atlas into the mainstream that few of their other titles have hit that level of success.
There's validity to that. There is validity to that. But I don't like for example, Terry. Everybody was saying, how weird is it that Terry's in the game? And it's like, I think it's a very American-centric opinion because Terry is huge in Latin America. They still have Neo Geo machines everywhere in South America. It's
not even just American-centric. I think because like that represented in America, he kind of represents just this whole other thing outside of Nintendo that a lot of people were into in arcades and other things, and he's kind of a good face for that.
And when Masahiro Sakurai spoke about Terry and he gave a history of the Neo Geo and everything, you could tell that he was a fan.
That's one thing about Terry. That's one thing about Sakurai that a lot of people don't realize is he is a big fan of fighting games. He always has been. He's talked about it a lot in interviews, and that affects a lot of what he does.
He makes a lesser fighting game, so he doesn't make a fighting game that's better than the fighting games he likes so much.
Also, a thing too that it kind of makes this next point all the more painful is he loves fighting games and he wants them to be playable and fun. Yet at the same time, Nintendo as a company just like loathes the idea of Smash being a competitive fighter. Just absolutely hates it.
Sakurai part of that too. It's not just Nintendo because part of Smash was you already have. Like, he's not trying to compete. He's never trying to compete with the super competitive fighting games. He wanted to create something that was accessible because they already have the high-end fighting games for people who want them. They are already there. He loves those. He doesn't want to try to replace those. He wants to create something that anyone can pick up and play. And you want to know what? Some of those people might go find out they enjoy fighting games and move on to some of the more complex ones.
And I think that it's a little bit further than that too. Like, you're not wrong, but you could be more right, essentially, in that I think the lashback that Nintendo has towards Smash as a competitive fighting game has to do with two things. Is that one, tournaments restrict like 95% of the game. You have to play on a final destination stage with no items. There's banned characters. Like basically 95% of the game is not in there. They basically suck all the fun out of Smash Brothers. And the other thing is that the biggest one in the competitive scene has always been Melee, and only because of glitches.
Well, also because I agree with you that they would still have preferred Melee, but if there wasn't tripping, I think there would have been a bigger chance of some people moving to Brawl. Like, that was a deal breaker for
It wasn't
for a lot
just
of
the
people.
tripping, though. It was the fact that it was a slower paced game, and it was a better balanced game. Believe it or not, like, fighting game community do not want the game to be all that balanced. They want to have a meta.
Hmm. Well,
And when
figuring
you have,
out the
like-
meta is
when you
figuring out
have,
the meta is
like-
part of the game.
Yeah, when you have, like, Fox as the absolute god of the game, and then everybody else is trash, that's the kind of fight. And then to even play the character competently, you have to be aware of like frame data and glitches and things that weren't even supposed to be in the game, like wave dashing. And then Nintendo's like, we released a better version that doesn't have any glitches, and they're like, oh well, we don't want that.
Well, it's a challenging thing to do for game developing specifically, but it's especially with fighting games where you have to make a lot of the roster. Ideally, you want the entire roster to be viable in some way, shape, or form, so that they don't just like get dumpstered by someone else that you're playing up against. Like, sure, you can have bad matchups and good matchups, but you still want there to be a sense of I can come back and win in this fight. And until very recently, that really hasn't been a thing that has been successful in a lot of fighting games.
I think that the Dragon Ball Z
recently-
game does it really well.
The Dragon Ball Z game is underrated.
Yeah, it has really good balance.
Well, the part of the reason why Dragon Ball's got such good balance is because Arc System Works has been working on anime fighting games for a long time.
Yeah, they do BlazBlue, right?
And they basically know, like, okay, well, how do you make these people feel good? How do you make them feel competitive? How do you make them feel balanced? And at the same time, also have it fit the play styles and the aesthetic and the images that you have with Dragon Ball Z itself.
Talking just to before we move on too far from it, because I had a comment about talking about the glitches. I mean, fighting games have a tradition of glitches becoming part of gameplay. In the original combos in the earliest games in the 90s weren't programmed in intended. They were unintended consequences, and then they ended up integrating combos, and it's since become, one of the accepted mechanics of the genre.
That's very correct, but that's not Nintendo's style. They are embarrassed by the glitches in Melee.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I would agree with you that that's why they didn't.
If it was Capcom, they would have leaned into it, like you said, because that's what happened with Street Fighter 2.
Exactly, and I think that would have been a better choice. But I absolutely agree with you that that's the reason Nintendo didn't want to. They are not the kind of company that goes, "Oh, that wasn't what we intended. We're gonna canonize that, and no." They're gonna go, "This never happened. You never saw this." And sweep it under all of the rugs.
I have to disagree with one key issue. You said that would have been a better choice. It would not have been a better choice. It would have been a better choice strictly for the tournament players and the serious players, which is not in the spirit of Super Smash Brothers.
And see, I disagree.
It's not at all, because they want this to be a game that anyone can pick up and play, and that's why they've moved away from that. I mean, this is supposed to be something that's just fun. It's supposed to be goofy and chaotic, and they don't want that. And when you cater completely 100% to tournaments, you wind up with the initial release of Street Fighter V, which was rushed out to make it out for Evo and was missing most of its content,
which is ridiculous. And we talked about that in a previous episode. But I disagree with your premise in that I don't believe making something that is accessible to everyone and making something that you can attain a mastery over for tournament play are mutually exclusive ideas.
You could obtain a masterful out of anything. You could be the best person at using a fork in the world.
Okay, yes. But the whole point is that they're to attain a mastery that people would care about actually doing, you need some kind of complexity for you to attain mastery over. The whole point is to not do it in such a way that it doesn't alienate people that aren't at that level. That's what all of the best games do. If you have a game where anyone can pick it up and play, but you have a level of mastery you can get over the game that you don't notice when you first pick it up, those are the best games.
No, I agree with that, but my point about specifically about Smash Melee is that the reason that the tournament, and let's be real, the Smash tournament community is garbage. I want to just get that out of the way. They're garbage. Yeah. But the reason that they won't let go of Melee is because it's so prohibitively difficult to learn to play at a competitive level. They like that exclusive club mentality where if you can't, because I've literally seen forum posts where people says if you can't wave dash with Fox, you are bad at the game, you are trash.
Maybe it's just me overreacting to when Smash Ultimate had some concessions, tournament players, so many people kicked back on that, and basically I went, as long as that the game is still accessible to newer players, which by the way, I'm not a newer player, I'm not a good player, I'm never going to be one of the tournament players, but I'm totally fine with stuff being there for them as long as it's not detracting from the game I enjoy.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, Smash Brothers has been, and probably always will be, more than it's a fighting game, it's a celebration of video games. It's basically video games, the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes.
It really is. And hence why we will, just like the Game Awards a couple days ago, there will be announcements we all expect, and then there'll be things that are completely out of left field that we all go, what the hell was that? And that's exactly what happens when Smash announces characters.
Oh, yeah. I don't think...
And
was anybody like, what the hell to Sephiroth? Because
no.
The reactions that I've seen have been very positive.
I mean, I was like, what the hell, in the sense that, like, it was so surprising.
Yeah.
You just, like, usually the hype leading up to the next pick, there's usually some buzz about, like correct buzz. Like, when Banjo-Kazooie got dropped, there was, like, buzz about that being the next pick. Nobody was talking about Sephiroth ever as being the next Smash character, because, for one, most people were talking about having a different FF game being represented entirely.
Yeah.
Not even having an FF7 character, but having someone from, like, FF6 or FF10 or whatever, whatever insert.
It would have been Lightning if they chose someone else.
I surprisingly saw a lot of people asking for Noctis, which I thought was pretty funny.
I think it would have been Noctis before Lightning.
I think Noctis would have had some... I'm not saying whether he's the one who should have been chosen, but he would have had some interesting abilities in the game that just would have been different than other people. And I like characters that lend themselves to something different mechanically.
I mean, it could have been cool if they did something like the Dragon Quest hero, where you had a few different skins to represent a few different games.
Yeah. Like when we had Noctis in Final Fantasy XIV, and you got to do his teleport mechanic over the course of the fight, it just felt very different than what we normally do in that game. So it'd be interesting to see how they would handle that in Smash.
If you think about Lightning as a character, she was basically created as Let's Do Cloud as a woman.
She could have been.
She could have been, not an Echo Fighter even, but just a different costume for Cloud.
I think doing
fair, and I will say this in the defense of Lightning, the character. I don't think 13's a good game. The character is probably the most memorable of that series.
Well, my personal feeling was, in the way I described it, because I have a lot of issues with 13, despite the fact that I'm usually the one defending it, was that Lightning was Cloud but good, because I was not as big of a fan of Cloud in the original FF7.
Okay, let's leap off of what you just said and just get and just say that Final Fantasy VII is a little overrated. It's a good game, but I think that the reason that it's heralded as being so amazing is because so many people, it was their first RPG, and that's it.
I would agree.
That's the only reason. And I think that you hit it, is that Cloud is really not that interesting of a character. He's a guy who spends the entire game trying to impress a girl that was already into him.
I mean, the reason when I go Cloud but good is I feel like every other character in 7 is more interesting than Cloud is.
What?
Oh, absolutely. Well, except for maybe Vincent, because Vincent's
a
garbage.
character. That's absurd. That's actually absurd to say that.
Oh,
like, that's
here we
incorrect.
go. Here we go. We this is what happens. We've gone from Smash to Final Fantasy VII Flame War. All right. That's
Brian, what do you expect? Let's be honest here.
I
said freeform.
I did. I absolutely did. That's why I'm not complaining. I'm not.
I mean, in an ensemble story, you shouldn't necessarily have the one main character be the most interesting one. Otherwise, there's no reason to pay attention to the other people. I agree. The primary character should be somewhat of a
stand-in for the player,
by which you explore everyone and the different facets and the ways in which you can relate to all of them, because the main character can also, share similarities with each of the other members in the party, in the way that Cloud and Barrett don't see eye to eye, but they still fight for the same cause in the beginning. And then, all the other things that develop are at least in part due to the fact that Cloud's character is not fully fleshed in the beginning. I think calling him like a blank slate or anything like that would be reductive, but he definitely he forms his identity over time and through his interactions with the other characters, and I think that's the sign of a good protagonist potentially too.
May I have a rebuttal?
Yeah,
you always do.
I have a rebuttal too, but you go first.
Okay.
You said something.
Well, what I would say is I agree with you to a point. You can have multiple different types of leads, and the blank slate lead that you see in many games, look at Chrono from Chrono Trigger, or you have ones that are more integrated into the plot line and more integrated into the social situations. Those are more where you get named characters, you get ones that actually have their own dialogue, and Cloud seems like he's in between the two. He's not integrated enough on one side to really have a strong personality of his own, but he's not blank slate enough to be someone you can fully just put yourself onto. I like him more by the end of the game, and what he is in the Final Fantasy VII Remake is what I always wanted him to be personality-wise. They did a much better job for him in that. And don't get me wrong, I really enjoy 7. It isn't the best RPG of all time, but I do unashamedly love and enjoy that game.
Okay, two points. One is that you're absolutely right about Cloud occupying that space between being the stand-in for the player and being a fully fleshed out character, but that is by design. That is what the developers had intended.
Yep.
So that's something that is like, it's working the way it's supposed to be. The other thing about Cloud specifically is that it's not to me that he's lacking a personality. It's that he, for the first disc and a half, he's a douchebag.
Yeah.
He's the kind of guy who is play acting at being an eco-terrorist. He's play acting at being a hero. He's play acting at whatever it is that he thinks will impress Tifa. And his true personality doesn't come out until the very end of the game. And that is also by design. It's exactly what Square wanted to do. I just don't personally enjoy him as a character. I enjoy the other characters in the game way more.
A company succeeding at their design isn't a justification if that design is not
like I said,
enjoyable.
I don't like it. Yeah, I don't like Cloud, but I like I like enough things about Final Fantasy VII that it's not that big of a deal to me.
Absolutely.
I don't think by design you're engineered to really like Cloud. I think you're supposed to start out thinking he's this cool badass, and then as the game progresses and you learn more about who he really
disaffected
is,
loner, right?
You start to realize and because so many of us are teenagers, the kind of person that you think he is.
Yeah, and because so many of us were disaffected teenagers when we played it, we're like, oh god, he doesn't care. That's so cool.
I mean, I can unlikable
I really
characters.
Genuinely believe that the developers did not really intend for Cloud to be the most liked character out of the ensemble. I think that was supposed to be Aerith.
Absolutely. Aerith is absolutely the one that you're supposed to cry over.
And did.
But
That was all set up intentionally.
But as for every other character being more interesting than Cloud, okay, like I don't think Vincent is interesting, and I don't think that Ketchy is all that interesting.
Okay.
Take that as you will. I don't know. I hope the remake fleshes some of those characters like Vincent and Ketchy and Yuffie out more when we eventually get the rest of the game.
I feel like Vincent's background is interesting, but yes, what they actually show of him isn't that interesting in 7. I'll agree with that.
Yeah.
But I think there's enough there.
Optional character.
I think Final Fantasy VII is a game that you'll only understand 20 years after playing it anyway, because if you think about when you play it as a kid and you identify with Cloud and everything, and then you look back on it and you're like, he doesn't even have a personality. He's a mixture of Zack and Sephiroth and anybody else that he thought was a badass.
I guess for me, and I absolutely agree with that. I think part of the why it didn't, Cloud never hit me the way it did for a lot of people, even though I was the same age, was just I'd been playing RPGs since Final Fantasy I. I'd played literally over a dozen RPGs by the time I got to 7. I would say probably dozens at that point. So for me, I had much more comparison to draw on.
Yeah.
And I basically go, there are characters in these other games that are far more interesting as a main character than Cloud, but I still related to the other characters, and I like some of the relationships there. I'm not just ragging on Cloud. Remember, this whole thing started from me saying Lightning was them trying to do Cloud right.
Yeah, no, and you're right. I agree with you 100% on that. Like, Lightning was Final Fantasy 13 had a few issues. I happen to like the game a lot, but, it wasn't perfect.
No,
but the characterization in general was a lot better. And let's be real, the Final Fantasy teams, like Final Fantasy has never been good at the main central character being interesting, which is why the best one doesn't have a main central character.
Well, which one? 14?
6. 6.
As soon as you said there's no main central character, I was like, he means 6.
Of course I mean 6.
Yeah. Okay, 6 has 2 main characters.
It has... They're all main characters. It's an ensemble.
No, dude, it's 2 main characters split halfway through the game. It's Terra, then it's Celis. That's how the game works.
Or is it Locke?
No. No, I think it's Terra because what's going on in the first half of 6 is very Terra is the focal point of what's going on.
I agree with you. The overworld music is called Terra, but I'm saying that you can't sit there and say, well, Terra is not the most interesting because she's only the main character for 40% of the game, and then she's not. You don't even have to have her in your party after that.
Yes, but you don't have to have almost everybody in your party in the second half.
There's 2 main characters. That's what we're saying. The first half of the game, she's the main character, and then they transition that to Celis. That's how it works.
I think that you're confusing leader with main character.
No,
they're the driving portion of the story for both halves.
Focused around.
I don't personally agree, but that's
Okay.
It's an argument for the DLC reboot.
But Square can do interesting lead characters and unlikable interesting characters. One of my favorite games is The World Ends With You, whose lead is an absolute dick.
I was only speaking about Final Fantasy.
Yeah,
because they've had a lot of other RPGs where they've had absolutely fantastic main characters.
Right, absolutely.
I think what we can all agree on is that the new Smash stage missed a golden opportunity by not having Bugenhagen in the back swinging his arms around.
I mean, that could be in the game, but we just don't know about it.
It could be a trophy.
No,
Bugenhagen DLC.
Future, he's not there.
Oh, wow.
It's a bum.
Oh, so
real bum rap.
Let's wrap up the Smash stuff there.
Yes, it was your topic, and see, this is the fun.
And we went an hour on that.
This is the fun of a free play because Gabe still has to go, and he has to leave in 10 minutes.
It was Ron's topic, and we spent 5 minutes talking.
That's how it'd be.
I told my other folks that, hey, I'm going to be late, so I have a little bit of leeway.
You have a little bit of extra time? Okay, so now that we've had that wide-ranging discussion, you're up.
Yeah, and on the subject of games that all of us have played multiple times by the sound of it. Also, since the last time I was on, I think I probably mentioned that I had never completed Chrono Trigger and got roundly chastised for that, which I knew was going to happen. But I've I finally went through and played it.
Yeah, so
Roads to the Unbeliever.
I remember that because the last time, Gabe, you were on was actually 2 years ago this month. Your last appearance was the free play to end Season 8. So,
yeah.
Can I just say that, like, if somebody hasn't played, like, a really good game like that, it's kind of like a dick move to treat them like crap. Like, I'd be jealous, like, wow, you get to play Chrono Trigger for the first time.
I think it was more so a case of
Yeah,
you've had 25 years to play this. What the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, I have several games that are.
I mean, there's
like
a
that.
lot of video games out there.
I think we all have that
The
problem.
the reality for me was that I had several attempts to get into the game and things kept going wrong. Like, I think one time the save file got deleted. One time I was playing on a handheld or one other thing, and it relied on a button, and the button stopped working, and so they had no way to transfer the save file. Yada yada yada. I finally played it, and it was good. I think it being hyped up for 25 years for me kind of broke it a little bit. I enjoyed it. I also had a lot of beef with it, but that's not my topic for today. We'll have to talk about it during the reboot.
Wow, throwing shade at my fave game and then just bouncing off to change the topic. Yikes.
I did not hate it. I liked it, but my topic is a little bit tangentially related because I was wanting to talk about replayability and how my feelings about replayability have changed over the years. I feel now that there are so many fewer games that I feel compelled to return to due to time constraints, due to, well, maybe I didn't get 100% of everything. I used to be a big completionist, and I'm very much not to the same extent anymore, unless I really, really love a game. But I mean, I know that a lot of games these days are being designed with gameplay loops in mind to really incentivize people to live on one game for as long as they possibly can. And
when you talk about gameplay loop, could you clarify? Because that actually has a terminology in the gaming industry, and I don't think it's what you mean.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of putting the two of them together because I think they're related, even though they're not the same. Like in the days of old, like reviews and such would give points for replay value on a game, and I think replay value scores these days get assigned to games that have compelling gameplay loops. So you play this game and it's designed in such a way that you can keep coming back to it and get something new or get deeper into it or find some reason to purchase the expansion or whatever else. And I feel I've so many more games that I've played recently have been, kind of reaching out their hand and asking me to take it and go along and play again or play a new game plus or whatever else. And I'm like, I'm okay.
You're ready to move on to the next thing.
Yeah, back in the day, I would do that in a heartbeat, That's why I think this is a good transition from like Final Fantasy VII, for instance, which I played several times, and I played Final Fantasy VIII again when they released it on the Switch, and I was like, maybe I didn't have to play this again. I loved that game. I've defended it on this podcast before, and I don't know. I was just in a different place, and I still, there's a lot of it that I still value, that I, don't want to spend the short amount of time that I have here now arguing about. But I mean, when I played through it, I said, well, I probably could have done without playing through that again. you know, and that's a feeling I had never used to have. I would just jump at the chance to do it again.
It's not the industry. It's us getting older. Because I read an article in TV Guide years ago about the way that children consume media, specifically television, but it works some for video games too. They'll watch something that they've watched a million times and be like, "This is my favorite part." They like the familiarity and revisiting memories, whereas adults are like, "Why are you watching that when you've seen it a million times?" And I think as you get older, the way that it's not everybody, because some people want to play the same game over and over again, but you know, what you said just rang so true for me. You're like, oh, all right, I finished this game, I'm ready to move on to the next game. And especially when you're a kid with 15 Super Nintendo games and your birthday's months away, and then you're an adult with 300 Steam games, and you're like, why would I need to play that again when I have 299 games I haven't played?
That's kind of where I was going to go. Is I think age does play a little bit into it, but I mean, I know people as adults right now who have watched the same movie 300 times. They just put it on in the background. Like, I do that with some stuff. But I think the fact that there is so much media to consume right now, far an order of magnitude more than there was in the 90s. Plus, when we didn't have our own incomes, we might only have a game every 3, 6, for some people a full year before they get another game. So they need something they can replay over and over and over again. Meanwhile, now there's so much other things that I can have a game that I gave a 10 out of 10 to, that I absolutely loved, and I will probably never play that game again in my life. There are only a few games that I have that I've ever gone back and willingly replayed.
Yeah, and I think one of the factors in that too is amount of time commitment that each game takes, because I would drop what I'm doing right now and go play through Mega Man X again, and that because I can beat the game in 90 minutes. So what? You know, that's less than a movie. But playing Final Fantasy VII again, I'll play the remake one day, and when I do, I'll be excited to do so. But I'm not gonna play Final Fantasy VII again, the original. I've played it 5 times or whatever. I've done enough. That it takes too much of my life, and time is only going in one direction. You know.
I actually can call that out, because I replayed the Final Fantasy VII for because I was on the FF7 remake episode, and I played through the entire first game, so when I went into the remake, I would have fresh memories to be able to compare the two. And I don't regret doing that, but yes, by the end of that game, I was definitely ready for it to be over.
And I think you said something really interesting before when you talked about people who watch movies over and over again. You'll say they just put it on in the background. And you know, my first knee-jerk reaction to that was, well, you can't put a video game on in the background. It requires so much attention and focus. But now we have things like Twitch and YouTube. You could watch somebody else play and do something else.
And I think that's part of why that stuff's gotten so big. There's so many. I mean, there's two reasons that streaming video games, that people, you know, doing Let's Plays and stuff has always been so big, is because, one, it's a way to be able to put video games on in the background where you're not playing it. But second of all, you'll as you said earlier, that we should feel jealous of somebody who's never played a great game because now they get to play it again. I'm never gonna have, because much like Spencer, Chrono Trigger is one of my favorite games of all time. I will never have that reaction playing it again that I did the first time. I can still enjoy it, I can still love it, but I'm never gonna have the magic of the first time. But if you watch somebody else playing it and see their reactions to all the stuff, you can get some of that joy back of seeing that new playthrough and experiencing everything fresh.
It's like watching those videos where kids find out that Darth Vader is Luke's dad. You know.
And I'm glad you used Chrono Trigger as an example there, because not too long ago I played through a game on Twitch called Live Alive, which is essentially like Chrono Trigger started out as the sequel to Live Alive before it became its own thing. And it was never released outside of Japan. It came out in 1994. Square made it. It was an RPG with a lot of different manga artists that worked on it. And I'd never played through it. I didn't really know much about the game. And it became an interesting journey, not just for me to play through this game for the first time, but for everybody in the chat who got super invested in it. And we still bring it up, like, wow, seeing that all come together at the end. These people weren't playing the game. They were just watching me play it. But for them, they got just as much out of it as I did, it felt like.
There's a community aspect to video games. There always has
that communal feeling.
Yeah, I mean, just going off of John there, like, I just recently played through Horizon Zero Dawn for the first time. And this was a game that had come out in 2017 on PS4 and was widely loved, critically acclaimed, and a lot of my friends who own PS4s, because it was a PS4 exclusive, they played this game and loved it, and they were very excited to see me playing this game for the first time when it came out on PC a few months ago. And, you know, you just said it, you know, like my good friend Wyatt, who has been wanting me to play this game for years, was watching me go through and watching my reactions to the major plot dumps and the major piles of feels that game can reduce you to. So yeah, I mean, that's a big thing now. I mean,
there's a lot to watching someone play a game for the first time. I mean, I recently played through Halo for the first time. And you think, like, you know, you're into first-person shooters. How come you haven't played Halo before? Well, I didn't have the fucking Xbox back then, and I wasn't into playing games like that with a controller.
Oh. Also, there's 10,000 games, and you can't play all of them. There'll always be something important to miss.
Exactly. So I finally, you know, I scheduled it on Twitch. I said, I'm going to play through Halo. It's 19 years late, but I'm going to play through this game for the first time. I mean, it was the remaster. But, you know, and people were digging not just that I'm playing Halo, but that I'm playing something for the first time. Because there's a sense of, like, it's almost like showing someone your favorite movie and watching their reaction to it.
Absolutely. You want to make sure that they laugh at the right time.
You're watching. Yeah, you're not watching the movie. You're watching them.
You didn't cry at this part? You're a psychopath. We can no longer be friends.
There's a lot of validity. That kind of thing happens too all the time.
And that is the thing. The difference, I think, for me, I also would be happy to watch someone play through a game I love, but I'm never going to play it again myself, because there is that social, that communal aspect, that shared experience that video games are so great at evoking. And I don't have the same motivation to play this game again, because at the end of the day, I'd be playing it by myself. And what fucking difference does that make? I've already made up my mind about the game, you know?
You made me think.
I will say there's a dark side to that community aspect as well, because an example I'll give that most people who are involved in the community know was how many YouTubers got harassed about playing Undertale.
Oh.
That's
because why it took me so long to get to Undertale, because I was so afraid of that.
Yeah. And Undertale is one of my favorite games. I absolutely love the game. But I was embarrassed by the community at that point, because let people experience the games at their own pace, at their own level.
Wasn't
let them
that
enjoy
the whole point of Undertale too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that there
Don't
wasn't
be a dick. That's kind of the whole point.
Well, not only but that everybody's going to play it differently, because it's like every choice in that made some sort of impact. Undertale was really brilliant for that, and when I got to it, I was, you know, I had like my moderators ready with machine guns, you know, and then nobody gave me shit. I was like, wow, either the community has calmed down, or I got extremely lucky. It turned out I was extremely lucky.
Well, I feel like the community has calmed down, but it took quite a while.
I know people who streamed it after me that were harassed, so I think I just got lucky.
I will say this game, you know, if you want community, there's at least 3 Twitch streamers on this podcast right now that you could...
I mean, I was thinking about, just a little while ago, about Zelda 2 on the NES, and I played through it a few times on Twitch. I played through it on YouTube ages ago, where I played it with a freaking keyboard. And people were like, how are you so good at this really hard game? And it's like, well, because I played it like 400 times before. You know, that's a game that I can get through in like an hour. And people say, well, how do you know what to do and this and that? Like, how did you know back then when there wasn't game facts and there wasn't the internet?
Spoiler, you didn't. You had to sit there and die 5 million times to figure it out.
No, we didn't. We had other kids on the school bus that would tell you things.
Or Nintendo Power.
Yeah, well, I mean, I knew this kid, Glenn, when I was in the 3rd grade, that would tell you every kind of lie possible about video games. He was the guy that would tell you something and you try and it wasn't true.
The guy who had a dad at Nintendo, right?
No, he wouldn't lie about that, but he would just tell you if you do this, X happens, and it was a complete nonsense.
I will actually admit one of my ancient sins here in that I'm normally the super reliable person. I'm super honest. I don't lie. I don't do that kind of stuff. I haven't since I was a kid because of some stuff in my childhood. But I did at one point convince my group of friends for fun that you could get Bahamut in your party on Final Fantasy I if you did a ridiculous amount of different things.
Wow. I mean, in this case, Glenn told me a lot of things about Zelda 2 that turned out to be true. And it was really, that was it back in the day. There was still a community. It just wasn't online. But we got to let Brian say something.
Yeah, because Gabe messaged me that he has to go. So we will wrap up Gabe and give him a farewell. So Gabe, thank you so much, not only for being on this episode, but for the 12 other times that you have been on Downloadable Content, starting back in 2015 with your baby's first free play over here. So again, thank you so much.
Yeah, and Brian and the rest of the DLC crew, it's been a pleasure chatting with you guys and arguing on occasion, and just all of that has been a real blast. I am on my way back to the future, gonna really work on perfecting my Sephiroth game, and hopefully when you guys catch up to me, then I can have a fighting chance, So anyway, take care.
All right, thank you so much. See you, Gabe.
Yeah.
All right.
And then there were 5.
Although we're about to get to 6 again because Ryan just messaged me saying, I completely forgot about this. Any room for me? So I'm telling him we can squeeze him in. So he'll be on the second half. So
what you're telling us is the serial killer took out a person and is now replacing them.
So we're playing Among Us now. Is that what you're saying?
Somebody is sus.
Out the airlock with you.
All right. So, so we replace Gabe, and a Ryan comes on.
Yes, I do.
Wild Ryan.
We couldn't have a proper DLC episode without a representative of the brothers Wallace showing up. So,
indeed,
it's either you or Andy, and well, here you are.
Yeah, exactly.
Little does Brian know that Ron and I have set up so that 100 different guests from every other episode are going to pop in every half an hour.
What is this, Royal Rumble DLC style?
Nice.
With
seems
steel
like
chair.
it almost.
And coming in with the folding chair. Anyway.
Right.
Alrighty. Well, I know, John, you wanted next, so let's give it to you.
I wanted to talk about emulation.
Go
because
ahead.
I think it's an incredibly important aspect of gaming these days, and especially the way that we consume retro games. Because even if you get these games legitimately these days, they're emulated. You buy your SNES Classic or whatever, it's emulated. You're and I think that like the video game industry as a whole has got to really kind of get their shit together. And my main issue has been with Nintendo. Nintendo's been railing against emulation since the 90s, and basically they only see it as an opportunity for copyright infringement, and that's absolutely a part of it. That does happen. But on the other hand, as I've grown older, I have come to think of it from a more like an archivist standpoint. I'm going to tell you guys a really quick story. I have a friend of mine. I'm not going to name him because it's an embarrassing story for him. He's a Twitch streamer, very good friend of mine. He's the guy that built my current PC. And he wants to stream weird and unusual games on Twitch, and he came up with the idea of doing Knuckles Chaotix. for the 32X.
Okay.
And for me, the process of streaming Knuckles Chaotix would be booting up the Genesis plus GX Core and RetroArch and just playing the game. For him, the process took months, and it was a mess. He had to buy a Sega Genesis on eBay, he had to buy a 32X, and he had to buy a game, and then I had to walk him through repairing the 32X because, of course, it was damaged and had to be repaired.
What 32X isn't damaged?
Yeah. Well, they have issues with there's a white ribbon cable on the inside of the 32X that it just shorts out all the time, and you have to unseat it and reseat it. And then, of course, and I told him, I said, don't be surprised if Knuckles Chaotix just doesn't work, because it doesn't. It's not a very good game in the sense of working properly. And then I said, once you get it working, I want to tell you the honest truth, it's not that good.
It had some good ideas.
It's okay. And then, and he's like, well, I thought it was like one of the best games on the 32X. And I'm like, yeah, that's like being the tallest inchworm.
Yeah. I will say, I think Knuckles Chaotix is better than the original Sonic the Hedgehog, but it doesn't hold a candle to almost everything else.
I think it's apples and oranges because, and this was the issue he had because he wound up hating the game, and it crashed on him so many times. And I said, well, you're playing it wrong. And he says, well, what do you mean? I said, it's a puzzle platformer. It's not a Sonic game. You don't rush through it,
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, he wasted hundreds of dollars on all this crap that is never going to be used again. And I showed him, I said, I know you have this weird bugaboo about emulation and you want to play on original hardware. I showed him where for $70 he could have had a modded Sega Genesis with every game on it. And he was like, I don't know, I want to play on the original. People have this fascination with the original hardware and the cartridge and everything. The batteries are going to die. Everything's going to rot and corrode.
If you really care about the original hardware, all you need is the Genesis and just have a flash cart, because that is that's going to play exactly like the cartridge with no difference.
Yes. And there's so many weird things about emulation that people don't get, but that's the biggest thing, is that it is, it's at that point where you're basically playing, you're not emulating the game, you're emulating the system.
I am 100% on your side on this.
And it's we need a Library of Congress for video games. But Nintendo's doing this weird thing where now they're monetizing it, and they're like, we're going to sell you Super Mario Brothers again. And I just want to say, you know what? Why don't you just dump your games on Steam at this point? Sega did it. It worked out pretty well for them.
Here's the thing. I don't have an issue with how Nintendo is dealing with, okay, we're doing it on Nintendo Online, or when they had the virtual console. I don't mind any of that. My issue is how hard they are trying to erase any semblance of emulation existing.
While using it.
Yeah, while using it. And at one point, while using a fan's version that they took code from.
Mm-hmm. Sorry about my dog, guys.
Okay.
Well, how about the fact that they sold everybody a SNES Mini with a broken port of Star Fox 2?
Well, Star Fox 2... Okay, what do you mean by broken? Because
it runs at about 60% speed that the actual ROM would run on an emulator.
Okay, I thought that was intentional. I didn't realize that was an issue on the SNES Mini.
Yeah, and it's weird. This is the company that didn't want to put Super Nintendo games on the 3DS because they said it was only 95% perfect emulation. They're so full of crap. They want to sell you all the Zelda games with each generation. When the Switch goes bye-bye eventually, you're not going to have access to all those games.
I mean, here's the thing. It is super important for any art, when we're talking about paintings and photography, into video games, into movies, that we have these things for future generations to look at, for future filmmakers, future video games. But here's the thing. When people talk about this, they go, well, yes, we need to make sure we have these copies, but we still don't want them to be available through emulation. We just need to make sure they exist. And if you are a young video game maker, and you can't look at and see the classics of your genre the way you could go online and see a copy of the Mona Lisa, see a copy of these things. If you can't do that as a video game maker, then what they're basically going is, you have to be wealthy enough to be able to buy these games and these systems and all of these things at incredibly high prices if you want to appreciate the past of what you are going to be contributing to and be able to learn from the art form, from what came before, which is how you're supposed to learn.
Yeah, and you have to buy them over and over again too. Each generation free. I mean, like I said, like how come I can transfer Pokemon from a Game Boy game up to a Switch game, but if I bought Super Mario Brothers 3 on the Wii,
I think we had this discussion before.
You
can't actually do it from a Game Boy game at this point. What was it, Spencer? You would know.
I had asked that before. Like, could I transfer a Charmander from original Pokemon Red all the way up to Switch? I think the answer was no.
If it's in the Poké, you can.
No,
you have to transfer to the 3DS first.
The OG games can't be transferred to GBA.
I didn't say GBA. I said Switch.
No, but I'm saying, like, if you wanted to have a Charmander from original Pokemon Red on your original Game Boy cartridge, that cannot be made all the way to Switch.
Yeah, you can.
The Fire Red remakes or the Let's Go, or...
But you're forgetting that the Game Boy games can transfer to Gen 6 and 7. They can. I mean, it's the digital versions. You know.
Well, again, that's not your cart from when you were a kid.
No, I'm not. You know, and I mean those were cut off at Gen 3. So we're talking about two different things. But I'm saying that but it can be done from even as far back as Game Boy Advance with hardware.
Absolutely.
Software, you can go back as far as the 8-bit Game Boy. But like, so you don't need to catch your old Pikachu again, but you need to buy Super Mario. But like, if I bought Super Mario Brothers 3 on the Wii, I have to buy it again on the 3DS to be able to play it on the 3DS. Why isn't that key to an account?
I mean, having a unified Nintendo Online account back when they sold the Virtual Console would have made a whole lot of sense. But now that they have not brought a Virtual Console out on the Switch and have moved to the Switch Online, which honestly I don't think there can be really much complaint on the Switch Online.
There can be, because once that online service is gone, that's it. Online services only go for so long.
I meant on the cost, but...
Oh, on the cost. No, the cost is fine. But it's like, yeah, eventually you're not going to have that online service anymore, and you're going to lose access to all that because you didn't buy them. You only bought a subscription service that gave you free games.
Well, yes, I mean, we have accounts now linked to purchases. So, like, I had, 3DS stuff that I downloaded, and my 3DS was destroyed, and I had to get another one, and all that stuff that I downloaded on that 3DS got transferred digitally into my new 3DS. So they're not all the way there yet, but they are making steps in that direction, and I feel like with the way that they're working with the Switch Online accounts, that they might be leaning more towards a continual existing account that lasts beyond one system at a time.
I also think too that some of these companies are not just choosing not to update their games to put them on more platforms. Like, what is it? Marvel vs. Capcom 2. The last console it showed up on was
PlayStation 2.
Yeah, PlayStation 2.
Yeah, that's an issue with the Marvel license.
Yes.
Yeah, but the point I'm trying to make here is some of these companies are choosing not to allow for emulation in the first place, or allow them to be put up on a digital store.
Yeah, I know that there was a brief revival of Marvel vs. Capcom 2 digitally on, like, I think PlayStation 3 or something, but Marvel's license goes away in like 5 seconds. It's like buying blueberries. They exist in a state that you could eat them for about a minute.
I honestly thought part of where you were going to go with this whole conversation was Nintendo taking down the Smash people being able to play online when they created a modified way so they could continue to have their tournaments during COVID, which maybe they're right, but it's a real bad freaking look.
It doesn't look good, no. And I was going to touch on that too, because that technically is a form of emulation as well, yes. But yeah, it's like Nintendo's always had really bad takes on emulation, and it's odd that Sega seems to understand it.
It's that, like, people make the argument that companies need to defend their copyrights or they will lose them. But here's the thing. multiple copyright lawyers have spoken out going, this is not something that's ever actually been proven. That you letting a fan do stuff, what you need, the only thing they really need to do in courts is prevent people from profiting off of it. Like, you as a
copyright.
fan... Yeah.
Copyright shouldn't exist the way that it does because it was originally something where you would copyright something and you would have exclusive rights to it for a certain amount of time. And then it would go into the public domain. And by the way, you can thank Disney for messing that up.
Yes,
it wasn't even your lifetime. It was originally, I believe, 20 years. It wasn't even your lifetime. Lifetime was a change, I believe.
It was 17 years originally.
Was it 17? Okay, thank you.
It was 17 years, and I know this because, when back in my Walmart days, people trying to copy their kids' school pictures at a Kodak picture maker, and me having to be like, yeah, that violates federal copyright. You can't do that, and getting my face chewed off for it. And I'd be like, you want to know why? Blame the mouse.
Walmart doesn't care anymore.
Walmart never cared in the first place, but I did.
No, I know, but at this point, you can do all of that stuff and have it all printed out for you without even dealing with an associate anymore.
I had a friend who was a real weirdo about copyright for a while, and I remember I took a picture of a page in a comic book and showed it to him, and it was partly just to set him off. And he was freaking out about international copyright laws and how you're not allowed to do that. And I said, okay, let me ask you a question. If you came to my house and I let you read the comic, is that violating international copyright laws? And he's just like,
Here's the thing. For me,
I'll put it. Let me just say one thing quickly. If copyright law says that back in the 1500s, you'd have to pay $30 to go see the Mona Lisa in digital format right now.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I'm of the opinion that for me it's an ethics thing. If it is available at a reasonable price, I will pay the money for it. Again, even if I had it in a different one, to be able to play it. So, like with a video game, I don't mind it when they're cheap. When they're cheap and available, that's my issue. Is availability.
I think you speak for most gamers too, because the piracy scene gets gutted whenever it's more convenient to buy things. And it's all about convenience. The truth
of everything. Yep. It's the reason that MP3s don't really exist anymore. Yes, I know they do. I have a bunch of them on my computer. But that's not the easiest way to listen to music anymore. No, and that destroyed it. Same thing with Netflix. I mean, less so now, but for a while, with videos, people weren't downloading videos because you want to know what? Just paying for Netflix, then you can watch all of them without having to worry about finding them and downloading them and making sure that it's not in Portuguese or that you're not downloading a porn video that says it's The Force Awakens.
I have something on Steam.
Do you speak from experience, Ronny?
I don't, but it is an actual story from a friend of mine.
Okay. It's happened to me too.
It happened one time.
But I have something on Steam. It's called Sega Mega Drive and Genesis Classics.
Yep.
It's free. You get Sonic 2 with it, and then you can buy every other Genesis game for $5 a pop. It
or less.
Comes with this virtual thing where there's even you could even put on a VR goggle and be in a living room with a Genesis and sit there and play the game and it looks like you're looking at a TV. And not that I have VR, but that's the thing. What's stopping Nintendo from just doing that? And I mean, obviously, third party is a little different, but there's a lot of games that could be released on Steam. Why do we have to wait for the next Nintendo piece of plastic to play Zelda again?
I mean, because they want you to buy the next Nintendo piece of plastic.
Yeah, but we're going to buy it because there's going to be a new Zelda.
The answer to your question is because of money. Sega. The reason why Sega is doing this is because they want to make money, and they can't make money in any other way right now because they don't have a console. They don't have any sort of easy distribution method.
Consoles
doing Steam.
Okay, let me give you a little bit of industry inside info here. Consoles are always sold at a loss.
Yeah,
we all know that.
So Nintendo doesn't make a lot of money off of sales of the Switch. It's about
getting the console. Yes, they sell consoles at a loss, but it's about getting them into your ecosystem so they're spending the money on your games, not somebody else's.
But I'm talking about Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Game Boy games.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm talking about old shit that
for me,
could be
I
released
think
digitally on PC.
I think the only reason I kind of disagree with you a bit is because you're specifically talking about Nintendo. Because the console creators that are also developers, I see very differently than third parties. I don't think that any third party gains anything from being a stickler on copyright. And Sega, yes, they're doing it specifically because they've been in rough straits at times.
There's a lot of third party games on this thing.
Yeah, but I think that Sega's taking the right stand on that, and I think every third party should move that way. On the other hand, I do understand for the console makers where it's they want to utilize everything they can to make you buy the console. And I can tell you right now, I can name 2 of my friends that got the Switch primarily for retro games.
I mean, that's fantastic. I just want a centralized place where you can buy a copy of an old Nintendo game and that you always will own it and always be able to have access to it.
I ranted before that when the Switch came out, that they weren't bringing us a virtual console that we could buy the stuff and keep and have that virtual console go across systems. So when the next Switch comes out, when the Switch 2 or the Switch Next or whatever they go to next, that we just can log back in and have our stuff the way that Sony's doing it now.
Yeah, and Sony's been doing that for quite some time too.
Yeah, but I mean, that's also the big reason why I'm never getting rid of my PS3, because all of my PSN purchases that I did while on PS3 will not transfer to later systems.
Or Xbox, where Xbox is trying to be as backwards compatible as possible for everything. Like, they're at least making an effort.
It just seems like everybody but Nintendo is making their best efforts.
Yeah.
Nintendo, I love Nintendo, but they are stuck in several of their ways, and one of the places that they fall, the 2 big places they falter, both involve the internet. One is emulation, and the other is online gaming and community.
And I think that, like, yeah, you might know 2 people who bought the Switch exclusively for retro games, but then there's like 2 million people who bought it for Pokemon Sword or Shield or Mario Kart.
But how many of them got the online service exclusively for the retro games? Because I can tell you, I'm one. I don't play online.
I'm sure it happened. Oh, absolutely. I mean, that is a reason. That's not a reason to get a Switch. That's the reason to get the online service.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
I mean, and here's the thing: like, if there was like a centralized thing where you can go to, it doesn't have to be Steam. It could be Nintendo.com where you buy it. Like, people are still going to want to play them on the Switch because it's freaking portable.
Absolutely. Like I said, I don't think that you're ever going to see them bringing them out to Steam because they want to keep it on their platform.
Yeah, that might be a pipe dream, but even if it was like you just go to, even if they had a Nintendo launcher like Steam that you could access on PC and that you could go onto their database of games and buy whatever you want and then play it on whatever Nintendo piece of plastic you have.
Let's say that when the Switch came out, that it was linked, so if you had any Wii purchases or Wii U virtual console purchases that you bought, you could play on your Steam, you could play on your Switch. Yeah. I would have bought the Switch much earlier than I did, because I would buy it and go and play Ogre Battle that I bought on the Wii.
I also bought Ogre Battle on the Wii.
Because it's a great game.
Yeah.
But
Wait, you're talking about Ogre Battle 64, right? The SNES one.
I was specifically talking to the SNES one, but I had both.
Oh, okay. Because I bought Ogre Battle 64 because it was like, wow, you can get this game.
That was the first time I got to play it.
You know, Ogre Battle 64, you want to buy it on eBay, you want to pay a couple $100.
Yeah, that was my first chance.
And
that
was the thing with my friend. Like, he's like, "Oh, I like something that I can hand to the next generation physically," and I'm like, "Yeah, but all this stuff's gonna rot one day." I mean, and you can physically hand somebody
an SD card with all.
Yeah, you could, or whatever the media is gonna be. You know what I mean? It might be an SD card. It might be some weird holographic thing.
It's funny.
It's gonna be something.
As of right now, NES carts are still fine and don't show much signs of failure and it looks like they may outlast the early CD systems.
Oh yeah, because CDs were never built for decades of storage.
Exactly. So like, it's going to be funny when 20 years from now, you're not going to be able to play your Sega Saturn games, but your NES games are still going to be kicking.
But and that's the thing, and emulation comes in two forms as well. There's also hardware emulation, because those games, those cartridges, they'll last a long time. You know what won't is the systems.
Absolutely.
Especially since how poorly designed the NES actually was. But then you have people who make basically NES systems, and they're way better designs. Nintendo doesn't like that. But that's, if that's the only way you can play those cartridges sometimes.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. I mean, some of the systems will last longer than others. We all know some of the systems were built like bricks, and some of those systems, you can breathe on them wrong and they don't work.
Like the 32X.
Yeah, but they're all going to fail eventually, and we know that. Yeah. But that's the thing. None of this stuff, like a lot of the stuff we're changing. First of all, we have two different conversations we're having here. First conversation we're having is, what should publishers do, both from a monetary and ethical standard, with their old games? But the other thing we're talking about is the issues that will never be solved until copyright law is fixed, and copyright law will never be fixed while we have billion-dollar corporations lobbying to make sure that it stays as broken as possible, because that's how they make the most money.
Or we could do what we have been doing and just take it into our own hands.
Yes, absolutely.
Which is what we've been doing. I mean, I have thousands of games, NES and Genesis and all that, sitting there. Am I sitting there and getting them just to have them for free? No, it's so that they exist somewhere. You know what I mean?
Be careful, the FBI's outside of your door right
they
now.
They don't give a shit.
I know they don't.
It's not, and people think, well, isn't that illegal? Technically, no, it's not. It's not illegal. It's not a criminal matter. It's a civil matter.
Well, I mean, okay, it's illegal. It's illegal civilly, not criminally. It's still
actionable.
Legal.
It's actionable. Yeah. And actually, me having all that crap is not even actionable. It's if I made it available to other people. That's actionable. It's
the selling aspect that usually, honestly, yes, they probably could prosecute if they could prosecute just off you having them, but it's not worth the time or money from what they're going to get out of it.
Yeah, and it doesn't hold up too well in court too.
Exactly. Well, it's gone back and forth in court, and that's part of why they don't do it that much, because they don't want any negative judgments that can be used as standards, so they'd rather sit on the ones they have so they can use it to scare people.
Now, you know who's been really good about this recently in making these games available cheaply, and is Square.
Yeah.
And Square has released the first 3 Mana games as a collection, which Trials of Mana,
which I own on the Switch.
Trials of Mana was never released here. We had a fan translation done by a guy named Neil Corlett, which was done in 2002, and that's the version that I was playing ages ago and recently.
We would play that at LAN parties when I was a teenager.
And we didn't even know that it was Trials of Mana because it never had an official Mana, so we called it Holy Sword Legend 3. So, or Secret. Some people called it Secret of Mana.
Seiken Densetsu 3 is what we call it.
Well, that means Holy Sword Legend. But.
Yeah, no, I know.
I just say it in English.
We didn't know what it translated to. We just called it Seiken Densetsu 3.
Oh, okay. Well, now you know. Now we know, right? But and they're releasing the first 3 Saga games, which are Game Boy games that I'm actually been streaming those recently. I'm actually going to be streaming Final Fantasy Legend 3 tonight. But for the first time, I've never played it before. And they released what else did they do? They released all their Final Fantasy games on Steam, on PlayStation Network. They've been really good about the Dragon Quest games.
They just announced that they're remaking Saga Frontier.
Yes, I saw that. Saga Frontier remastered, yeah.
Okay, so one thing that may come up later when I'm talking about it is I have been replaying all of the games from my childhood because I have some severe memory issues. And when I replay them, I'm writing notes on what I think of the game so I can remember and remind myself of playing them. So a lot of games I haven't played in 20 years, I'm replaying. I just replayed Saga Frontier, and then a week later they announced they were remaking it. And I wrote a fucking novel about all of the issues in Saga Frontier. I do love the game that it has, and they announced it, and I'm like, I just sat through 60 hours of this freaking game.
And now they're giving you a better version.
Yeah, and I'm like, I have to play the better version because I have to know. I have to see what they did.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, if I knew this was coming, I wouldn't have replayed the original.
And how about the
Square
Super
heard
Famicom
you.
ones?
Or whoever made Saga. They heard you.
Square did.
They heard you, Ronnie, and
Yeah.
they waited. They waited until they knew you were finished.
They wanted all your thoughts so that they could use them.
Yeah, it was Square. It's one of the Saga series.
Yeah.
The Final Fantasy.
Yeah. There's been like a lot of them. What about the Super Famicom ones? Somebody fan translated Romancing Saga,
Yep.
so you could play it. 2 and 3 never got fan translated for whatever reason. But you know what? You can get them on Steam. Romancing Saga 2 and 3, and they're the original versions. They're not like remakes or anything, and they're in English.
I was not aware of that.
Yeah, I wasn't aware until I was looking for download patches for my ROMs, and I couldn't find any. And then somebody said, "Hey, they're on Steam," and I have Romancing Saga 2 and 3 on Steam.
Square and Sega have done amazing jobs making their stuff available, and then you have people like Konami and Nintendo that have not been
Capcom.
I mean, and honestly, I would we've ragged on Nintendo a lot. I would say Nintendo's actually kind of in the middle because they do a decent job of making.
Who's the worst?
The worst?
Who's the absolute worst at making everything available?
I mean, here's the thing: whatever we say, somebody in the comments is going to pop up with, "Well, there's this obscure third-party publisher that's never put any."
I'm asking your opinion. I'm not asking their opinion. I'm asking your opinion.
Honestly,
on all counts.
They do some. But honestly, for me, I would say it's Konami.
It is Konami, and I'll tell you why. I got that Castlevania collection on Steam, and I'm just like, this is cool, but it's like there's so many games that are not on it, and then like there are some like there was a Castlevania the Adventure remake on the Wii. Castlevania the Adventure remake on the Wii is still only ever been on the Wii. Yeah. The same thing with their Gradius remake and their Contra remake.
I mean, Konami's not great. I mean, let's put it this way. Konami's already in the shit with gaming historians for erasing PT from existence. So now it's not even now there's no way for people to
how about
be able to look
they seem to want to erase Hideo Kojima from existence.
I mean, don't we all?
There's rumors that they patched things up, but
they took his name off of the box of Metal Gear Solid 5.
I know.
That's unforgivable.
I agree.
There are not many game developers that I think deserve to have their name put on the box on the front like that. He's one of them, and I'm not even a Metal Gear fan. But I respect the hell out of what this guy's done.
See, I kind of go the other direction, where I think that should be more of a standard practice, because we shouldn't be associating this game with the big publisher that put the money out. I would rather associate it with the director or the people who did it that had more of a role in the creation of the game, because that matters. Like, let's put it this way. Most people don't think of a movie. Yes, they know that it's a Sony movie or it's this movie, but they'll go, that's Del Toro.
Okay, that's a good point. Yeah.
Like, and we don't have that in video games, and that is very, very much a deliberate choice by companies.
I think also, though, there's another edge to it, and I'm going to use Kojima as an example, because his name was plastered all over Castlevania Lords of Shadow, a game that he had almost nothing to do with.
Yeah.
He, because the Kojima Productions logo is on there, his name's all over it. You know what he did for that game? He came in and he looked at the main character and he said, make him like more manly.
Well, you want to know why?
Genius.
It's because when we're talking about films, they have unions that require a certain percentage. If the person directs a certain percentage of the movie, they have to be put as a co-director or as a director, and they have to reach those ones to actually be listed as that. Meanwhile, the industry has no goddamn standardization, no goddamn unionization, and the companies can do goddamn whatever else they want.
We're talking about Japan here too, and their laws are pretty crazy there when it comes to copyrights and the way they treat employees and whatnot.
Well, yes, but a lot of their stuff is based off what we do, just farther.
So Kojima comes in and looks at the original design for Gabriel Belmont, which was a very Castlevania-esque design, that he was kind of an anime-looking character, and he said, make him a little more muscular, give him 5 o'clock shadow, and just make him gruff and manly. And they were like, yeah, that's a great idea. All of a sudden, Kojima Productions is on the game because he had one note. They're using his name to sell a game that he had very little to do with.
Well, it's also because they knew that game wasn't going to sell otherwise.
I don't know. Castlevania usually
they had.
Sells on his name alone.
From what I understand, they had little confidence in the title, and that's why they pushed that. That's not saying whether they should have had little confidence, but
I'll
they
tell
did.
you exactly why they had little confidence, because it was made by people in Spain. And Japan is very insular when it comes to gaming design. Do you know why? We're going to go back to fighting games, I'm sorry, but do you know why so many Japanese fighting games don't have rollback netcode? Because, we didn't invent that. That's an American creation.
Yeah.
Because Japan's the size of California, and at the absolute worst, you have like 5 frames of lag on.
Yeah. When you're playing Street Fighter V online, you're playing with people all over the world.
To use to use the medium that originated in Japan, in anime, we have the shonen protagonist, and we have their rival. They see themselves as the shonen protagonist, and they see American gaming as their rival. They can respect what we do, but they aren't going to duplicate it. They need to do it themselves.
I think they respect
in their own way.
I think they do respect American video games. I don't think they respect European video games.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that they had a lot of issues.
I think they question whether South American and European video games actually exist.
Well, they do, and
they're a thing, and they do. I know they do.
And the gaming industry out of Spain is phenomenal. Yep. And Mercury Steam proved that they could make really good Castlevania games, and there's a lot of other like indie developers that came out of Spain, and it's not like back in the days where it was like Rare making
there
like
are places,
really weird
there
games
are places
for LJN.
all around the world that are making great games. I mean, Brian and I can both sing the praises of Hollow Knight. That was made in Australia.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite games of all time too.
Yeah, such a good game.
To me, it's like, it has a lot to do with that. But, I do agree that, like, we should more normalize games being associated with the person. But no one, unless it's like Undertale, no one person creates a video game that big on their own. You know what I mean?
But no one person makes a movie.
Yeah, that's true.
I agree with you wholeheartly, but that's the same argument for why we shouldn't give the directors all the credit in movies. But we kind of do, because the whole art argument, which I'm not saying I agree with, is for something to be art, it has to have a single unified vision. So when it comes to movies, TV shows, or video games, yes, there's a bunch of people working on it, but the director's the one who ultimately makes the decisions that bring everything together. It's their vision, therefore they're the ones who get the credit. I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying that's been the argument for 50, 60 years when it comes to movies.
And you know how you can tell when a movie is really bad before it even comes out? When they say, from the producers of...
Yes, exactly! When the director's no longer in the advertising.
Oh my god. That's very true.
And now that we're 2 hours in, perhaps we should move on to the second hour, because I've said my piece.
Hey, that's okay. I fully expected that this final episode is going to...
Plus, I really have to pee.
Yeah, I think
I'll be right back.
Welcome to the DLC producer's cut.
Yeah, I think we all have to take a break because there's 4 of us still left to go, and Ron has to head off because he's going to be running some D&D with the children. So...
teach those kids how to maximize their geometry squares to maximize fireball damage.
Yes. So, Ron, just again, we said this before I started, you have been with downloadable content since episode 1, and you have been with me yakking about video games for 123 out of 183 episodes. So... you have my never-ending gratitude for sticking around with somebody who just wanted to talk about video games with friends, and just thank you for being my right-hand man this last decade.
You're more than welcome. I love talking about video games. And put a mic in front of me and say, "Give me a topic," and I can yak my head off, as I've proven before with various rants and Cranky Kong-esque discussions.
So, I mean, just again, thank you so much. I mean, if DLC winds up getting rebooted by you or by somebody else, we'll see what the future holds. But again, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me on, Brian. Everyone, you have a nice day /holiday /weekend /2020, and can we all just generally agree? Fuck 2020.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so enjoy, have fun with the kids.
Yep. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
All right. And so with Ron now having departed, and with 4 of us still left to go, and yeah, we've gone almost 2 hours. I need to piss. So on our second half, we will have Ronny, we'll have Spencer, we'll have Ryan, and then I will have the last word. So
shall we cut to a commercial?
Yes, we're going to cut.
From the DLC producer's cut is 80% commercials.
From the producers of the DLC podcast comes the LDC Codcast.
And then have Monty Python intermission music underneath all of that. So
why did it just cut to us in a Chrysler? I don't understand.
Monty Python. I think you mean
Monty Python?
No, you mean Benny Hill, don't you?
Either or works.
And now for something completely different.
A man with 3 buttocks.
Laughing.
And now for something completely different. A man with 3 buttocks. All right, more free play on the final episode of Downloadable Content on the other side after some music. We'll be back.